the show, I think, is one, it's a call to action to have people help other people and understand that we are all, in fact, connected.
Suraj, want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just the idea that what is the necessary need for faith, and faith in what, right? So we're trying to ask the question whether just faith in one another eventually turns out to be you know, the strength that both religious people and non-religious people who tend to help others find, and that keeps us moving. That's how we're cyclically connected.
You know, it's a great segue into the next question. The show's two co-creators, Brian Winbrandt and Stephen Lillian, said in an interview that the idea for this show actually came out of conversations that they had about their own religious experiences. One is a believer, one is not a believer. They also said that obviously the characters in the pilot are really all over the spiritual spectrum. You got Christians, you have a Jewish character, you have a Hindu character, you have a non-believer, an atheist. And they said that really reflects a lot of the dynamic conversations that go on in the writer's room. And those types of conversations about people's religious experiences really fuel a lot of the show. Do you as a cast also have those types of conversations about, you know, your own experiences? I mean, I read in one article that you had attended a Catholic school, and for a short period of time you play a cleric on screen, but you actually had considered that for a short period of time as well.
For a quick minute, I thought maybe I would be a priest. Wasn't in the stars. Yes, I went to a Catholic military school. Sounds redundant, but there you go. But I don't know, have we had this conversation?
Not really. Yeah. I think we all do come from completely different kind of ideas or perspectives, and that comes through pretty much in everything we say or do, how we react to one another and everything. So yeah, me and Joe have never had a scene together, which is annoying, and hopefully it'll happen for me one day. It'll be epic. But no, we've not had that conversation per se. I myself grew up like half. My dad was like super scientific. My mom was very Hindu, I mean, in tradition. So I grew up doing all the prayers and stuff, and I grew up next to a mosque, so that was cool. It was, you know, I saw multiple perspectives there, and then when I came here, it was a whole different thing. And so yeah, it's been something. Yeah, I feel like.
Yeah, and I think for me, as I said, you know, the Catholic military school and so forth, and I was baptized Catholic. But as I got older and had to deal with the people who were actually in the church, you know, racial prejudice sort of loomed its ugly head, and I thought this was not for me, and so I am not a practicing Catholic anymore. But in terms of this cast, I think the one thing that has happened is we are very quickly becoming a family, very quickly sort of becoming a group of people who, you know, will call each other, hang out as much as we can, and that's more important because the human connection is being made.
Well, I think one thing that comes out very clearly, at least in this episode, I'm sure in the series, that everyone would agree with is sort of the need for hope. And one of the show's executive producers, Sarah Schechter, describes the show as being both realistic, but being very hopeful and optimistic. And she said that it was that sense of hopeful uplift that really attracted her to this series. What was it that attracted you both to the series?
Well, I have this confusion with just why realistic and hopeful can't, like, just, I think it's realistic and hopeful, which is why it's good, because it keeps you grounded. At the same time, I don't think it is very spectacular for there to be hope and odd things and strange occurrences and stuff like that to happen in real life to everybody. It happens to everybody. This is just one of those things. It just happens to be extremely strange. And so, yeah, that's why I like it. It's real. It's got all the perspectives that make it real. Because, you know, people live in their own worlds, kind of. You know, it's the cumulative perspectives that makes it what it is. That's life or reality or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that these are real people going through real life experiences. You know, Miles and I have a problem as father and son. Kara has a problem with her mother leaving her. Those are real things that we all sort of have some inkling as to what they are. The hope always is that, you know, if you're Kara, that you hope you're going to connect with your mother and things are going to turn out well. The hope for Arthur and Miles is that things will turn out. These things always take time. So I think it was really smart of the writers to understand that these are real life experiences that other people can identify with, but at the same time, they're not going to be solved overnight.
Yeah, I think that's great. It doesn't tie everything up neatly. It's not overly sentimental. And you said it really addresses serious questions. I mean, questions of suffering. And I think another thing is it really treats the idea of belief in whatever you believe in, something larger than yourself. With intelligence, it actually makes belief believable. Even though it remains very agnostic about, you know, actually what's going on with the central conceit. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how the show tries to deal with all the characters, whether they're believers or non-believers, in a very respectful and intelligent way?
Well, I mean, to begin with, so it's an account called God. So we're not saying that God is actually the one who's the catalyst for all of this, that we don't know who it is. Could be somebody in their basement with a machine, very much like Person of Interest, right? That person has a problem, so go help them. But so for me, the reason all of this works is finally what he's meant to do, Miles, is to help people. And most of us, I believe, our tendency is to say, I don't want to get involved, or if I help, what if I fail, or maybe I won't give them the right kind of help. I mean, at first he thinks that, you know, his job is to help Kara find her mom. Well, that wasn't the job. The job is to maybe help them start a relationship that had been estranged. So that keeps it, I don't know if agnostic is the word, but I think that keeps it in the realm of humanity. What do you do for other human beings? How do you discover that we are all connected?
Yeah. I mean, I think it says it all that one of the upcoming episodes, I think, is called The Good Samaritan, about not passing by someone in need, that you get involved. So, and I think that is certainly evident in the pilot. You know, one thing that I think separates this from a lot of those other shows that I referenced in the first question is the whole using the context of social media. You know, I was just doing a Google, and some of the titles that came up in recent years are Googling God, tweeting God. And I think there's a lot of people have written about the sort of commonality between people's quest for the religious and social media. They both create, or they have the potential to create community and connectedness. People use both to try to find some meaning in their life. You know, as this theater being a project of the Archdiocese, you know, both Pope Francis and other recent popes have talked about social media as both a real blessing for an opportunity for authentic dialogue, but also the downside of also polarizing people or being divisive. Can you talk a little bit about how you think the usage of social media can make discussing some of these big questions to resonate more with young viewers who really exist in the world of social media?
I mean, I think that the social media in this series is a metaphor, because as you say, it seems to be something that brings us all together, but it also is very polarizing, just like religion can be. Suddenly, you're a believer, I'm not, or you're a believer of some particular belief, I believe something else. You know, now you have the Crusades or whatever. So I think that's what this is also referencing, is the idea of social media being that thing that seems to imply it brings us closer together, but social media is also anonymous. You can say horrible, terrible things about people and get away with it. And the same thing is true of religion. You can use religion as something to punish people or to enslave people or to try to ride over them. And so I think that's what's going on here.
Also, I think there's this other thing where, so there are so many hundreds of perspectives that you can access through social media, right? That's one of the main reasons why it's so great, so useful, is because you have so many ways of looking at the same thing and so many opinions that you can access. But the problem is that people, like a person, an individual, gets kind of flooded with the same opinion over and over again, and all their social media channels access that. They know what this person wants to read or like, and then force feeds them information that makes them think a certain way. I think that same thing is happening in this show, which is that we're trying to get away from that and try to see the other side, which is that there are these multiple perspectives that you can witness. There are these different ways in which these people are going through a hard time or suffering or need help or give help or are in some way inspiring, even if their lives are kind of difficult, right? And you can see those things because you have access to them because of social media, or in our case, this God account who sends us on these missions, right? Like now you're with this new person, completely different problem, but somehow what's the word?
Sympathetic.
Yeah, you can find so many sympathy. You can find so much like similarity and commonalities, and I think that's one great thing that we're trying to do here.
Yeah, there's a real humanity at the heart of this whole series. At the end of the episode, Miles encourages his listeners to have the courage to ask the tough questions in life. What, if any, tough questions did the experience of filming this episode or the series make you ask, or what types of questions would you hope that the series makes viewers ask?
I'm not really sure, but I guess it is that thing of how willing are we as individuals to extend ourselves to help other people. As I said before, I think that the tendency is always to say, I really don't want to get involved. It's none of my business. We're also living in a political time where everything's becoming very tribal, right? You're right, I'm wrong. There's no common ground, there's no compromise. And I think, again, the question would be, what do we have in common? If you're an atheist and I'm a Christian, what we have in common is we both have a belief. So let's start there.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes when Joe speaks, I just get lost. I'm just like, wow, what are these? Oh, it's good. One thing that I find to be, it's not necessarily a hard question, but it's just a question, is that every time we do this, the next episode, right? We come into connection with this new person, these new ideas and this new problem, right? This new theme. And so far, they've been so separate from my life, as I assumed it was, that I've always been a little bit aloof as to being like, okay, how's this going to work? Or where? Even the first pilot, right? He started the pilot, and the hard question was, is God real in the show? But that's the question you're asking in real life sometimes too, right? Like, you have to find this balance where you can be in that situation, ask these questions, and yet be separate from them. You can also immerse yourself in them. So the pilot did that for me. I was like confused. I was like, is there a God? Is this God account? What's going on in the show, in real life? And oftentimes it's been like that. These questions come into your real life as you're shooting them, and you're like, it's very interesting. It's like every time the question is deep. It's not like, I don't want to comment on anything else, but every episode has a deep question to it that you walk away with for those 2.5 weeks that you're shooting them. And to a degree, you're always thinking about it or being questioned by that question. And I think it's, for the people working on it, that has been a very interesting thing. I think already our ideas, if not changed, have at least evolved. And as far as God, or just the idea of helping other people out of just the simple necessity or need for one to help others.
Well said. And so often when you turn your TV on, you could turn your brain off. And for a show like this that actually makes you think, it is a wonderful thing. And Joe, I think you said it beautifully. Maybe a place to start is just finding that common ground. And that's hopefully what we're trying to do here at the Sheen Center, is to be a place where people of different faiths, no faith, can find a common ground to just talk with each other, because I think talking with each other is better than yelling at each other.
And better than texting to each other.
Yes, better than texting to each other. One of the earliest questions asked in Scripture is, am I my brother's keeper? And I think, the answer is a resounding yes, and I think this show says that we are each other's keeper. You said at the heart of this series is that mystery of, who is behind the God account. Can you share any guesses with us?
I don't think we know. I'm not even sure that the writers know. But because I think the idea is that's the least important part of the series. The most important part of the series is what that account makes Miles and Rakesh and Kara do, which is to go out and help people. The greater thing that happens in the series is the fact that we all begin to discover, that we are all in fact connected, that we are not simply sort of human islands out there in the sea of humanity sort of floating around on our own, that in fact without each other, none of these things happen. I mean, to do a television show, for instance, takes 100 people at least. And all those 100 people have to collaborate at one given moment to make one moment happen in a television show. To me, that's about as spiritual as you get.
The spirituality of filmmaking. There you go. Absolutely. And now we got another event coming up. That's wonderful. You're right. You know, no person is an island, and I think that's a really important message, particularly in today where our world is getting so increasingly divided. So I guess God Friended Me on Sunday evenings on CBS, 8 p.m. 8:30 on CBS Sunday evenings. I hope neither of you are unfriended during the series, but again, thank you both very, very much, and thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.